this before. I've been through this before. I do think something important has changed in the crypto market, which leads me to believe that this will stop sooner than it might otherwise. And that's we've chopped off sort of the left tail of crypto returns. I think previously, a few years ago, if we had a big market pullback like this, you'd start to see the news stories about, is this the end? Is crypto going to zero? Is it all over? I think those have been well and fully put to bed, right? Remember, we now have folks like BlackRock in the ecosystem. We have Wall Street firms building on ETH. We have multiple positive drivers. So I think there's more of a cushion under ETH than there used to be. And I'd be surprised if we pulled back significantly from here. There's been a lot of building around this area. And, I think the long-term trend is up. We're still confident in our 2025 prediction, which sees ETH go above $7,000 by the end of next year. So I think all of those trends remain intact.
What particular
industry trends? I think when you stack these three together, you come up with a bullish portrait. One of the reasons I'm not worried about this pullback is it hasn't changed the regulatory outlook. It hasn't changed the fact that there are a huge number of new investors coming into Bitcoin who will find their way into ETH. And that hasn't disrupted the growth of stablecoins, tokenization, or AI agents, or made it more likely to take place on other layer one blockchains. And so my fundamental thesis for ETH is still intact, and therefore, still bullish, still looking at that $7,000 plus price target.
I do wonder too, though, I guess when you kind of weigh out where we are, the other exciting piece, and maybe other cryptocurrency we should discuss is down by about the same margin in Solana, and a lot of excitement building there just because of the idea of eventually getting the green light to have a Solana ETF. I know that's something that we talked about last time. And I know overseas, looking at opportunities there, we should talk about in terms of Solana. But when it comes to that, I wonder...
Big improvement if we could see that happen on the ETF space. The other big improvement would be in-kind creations and redemptions, which would both make the ETFs more liquid, more perfect, lower cost, etc. So you're going to see this improvement. Beyond what the SEC can do, I think you're going to see ETFs be approved on more wealth management platforms. Important to note that as exciting as the flows into these ETFs have been, they haven't been fully approved on Morgan Stanley and Wells Fargo and UBS and other major wealth management platforms. Clearing out the regulatory clouds makes that more likely to occur. So I think that will happen as well. But more broadly, what removing the regulatory cloud, or sort of the regulatory sword of Damocles that's hung over this industry, will do is unleash a million entrepreneurs who are going to build in the ETH ecosystem, who are going to build in the Solana ecosystem, who are going to build in other layer one blockchain ecosystems. I think the regulatory uncertainty has kept some of the best, most established blowouts of levered long positions until you bottom out. That's just native to the crypto community. That's exactly what's going on now. It's not a fundamental retracement. It's a cleansing of leverage in the system. And ultimately, that puts us in a stronger position, but it is painful, and it can continue for a while. It's pro-cyclical, to use the term. And I think that's really what's driving this. It's not the ETF flows, which are positive. It's not the corporate buyers, which are positive. It's not the governments, which may be positive. It's levered investors in crypto.
Well, you mentioned MicroStrategy. I think that one was playing out publicly, in ways that I think maybe the last couple of weeks, maybe people who hadn't known, maybe weren't so closely tuned to things like you or I am, in terms of MicroStrategy's strategy to really continue leaning into and make a levered bet on Bitcoin. And, when you look at MicroStrategy's stock right now, not necessarily super far down in terms of where we're at. And I don't think Michael Saylor is going to be deterred here in terms of pursuing the strategy he's already laid out. But that is one
market right now. I think if the US legitimately goes into the market and buys 1 million Bitcoin, triggering other governments to go in the market and buy their own million Bitcoin, I think the price of Bitcoin is more at like $500,000 or $1 million than it is today. So I think the market is relatively honest with itself that that's a low probability event, or it would be much higher than we see, right now. Mostly, I think, again, this is a market that ripped from $70,000 to $108,000. That is a huge increase in market capitalization. It's a huge percentage move over a very short period of time. I think this is probably a natural reset, and of course, it's amplified in the altcoins, if you want to call them that. It's amplified from everything from ETH on down, which had truly spectacular moves and now are resetting. I mostly think rising to us. I think there's substantial demand actually, and substantial interest in Ripple and XRP. I think people are looking at an asset and a blockchain that a lot of crypto writes off as like a vintage 2017, hasn't really done anything. But there's an outside perspective that through an extended bull market and huge regulatory pressure, a community and a blockchain, which is extremely low cost to operate, has persisted in having interest. And it's now sort of unshackled to some degree from that regulatory threat. And it's starting to do things that are interesting in the market, like roll out its own stablecoin. That's not a guarantee that it will be successful, but there is really, probably to someone who's crypto native, a surprising degree of interest in XRP and what Ripple is doing, and a surprising.
I do want to kind of try and dig a little bit deeper into what you think could be applied here in the U.S. As we said, again, new chair at the SEC coming in. Huge hype and huge expectations around what could potentially be done here in the U.S. So what was the takeaway from that experience and what you expect to see in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to note is that staking is really important in the Solana ecosystem, right? The way that protocol is designed and the way its tokenomics is designed, stakers earn a remarkably high yield compared to many other chains. And so there was significant demand for an ETP that has access to staking rewards. I think what you'll see in Europe is a demonstration that ETPs can successfully stake and can navigate the liquidity issues that surround that through.
But Matt, I know we're running out of time here, so I do want to back up and just kind of think about the main kind of takeaway. I got hit up by friends, a couple weeks ago saying, "Hey, should I sell my ETH?" And I didn't think that would be a good thing to do right now. Seemingly less correct as we look back in hindsight, I suppose. But there's a lot of room to run. So, I mean, you tell me what our viewers should know in terms of navigating this now, what the right way to think about this sell-off is.
Yeah, my view is that this is a hiccup and not a reversal in trend. But the thing I love to tell people, you probably get this all the time. When crypto is ripping and it's new all-time highs, everyone's telling themselves, I wish I got in at X. And if there is just a market pullback to X, I will invest. All too often over the last 7 years, I've seen people make that promise to themselves. But then when the market pulls back, they don't actually act and get in as they said they would. And so the only thing I would say to folks is like, look, right now that trend is still on. It's still telling you to invest. We'll see if that's true tomorrow, the next day. But until that reverses, that's sort of like my first signal that I should start paying attention to this pullback, that it may be more extended than I otherwise expect. Right now, that signal still tells me it's a bull market. I'll update on Twitter when that changes. But right now, the bull market is still on from my favored momentum perspective.
Yeah, quantitatively, I feel like that's the main takeaway. And then qualitatively, we were chatting with Fundstrat not too long ago about, look, the Fed kind of gave the market update that happened on Wednesday. We see this pullback, but like fundamentally, if you don't think anything in the market has changed around a lot of the catalysts to come for crypto, then nothing has really changed. And so I think when you back